So, did you volunteer for the armed services or were you drafted, and what were your feelings about the experience?
I volunteered and they didn't take me.
You didn't?
You were about to be born and
No. My dad would have. My dad would have been about to be born, wouldn't he?
no. Um, Bob was.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I just decided to wait until you were born. After you were born, I volunteered again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you want to know where I was?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing they did is send me to the first what the hell? This is my trouble now. I can't come up with names. It was well, it was a communication school,
Mm-hmm.
and that was 3 to 4 months. From there, they were going to send me overseas, and they sent me to an advanced communications school, which was a cryptographic school.
Mm-hmm.
Because of my service in the National Guard, they also made me a kind of a junior officer. And I would lead my own troops. Well, at the communication school, I had to have a parade every night. And at the end of it, they took me as a teacher. And we moved to Illinois. And by the time everything came through, the war had ended. I had about a little over 3 years in teaching and so forth. And no, I wasn't overseas, but it wasn't my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in between, I took a 6-month ship in the Navy, and I went to Central America, and on the way we stopped at, what the hell is the name of that? Well, anyway, it was down in the Caribbean, and I was across the Navy. I came back and I decided I didn't want that. And they took me out and they put me back in the Air Force. And they made me an officer and took over the local guard. And fortunately, I made what I thought I needed to for a wife and 2 kids. And one of the companies used me for not only the commanding officer of the local one, but every time I got ready to quit, they promoted me all the way to general.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 30 years, 3.5 in World War II, and 30 total years in the Guard and World War II, and never got stationed overseas. Now, I did a bunch of flying around. I was in France, I was in Italy, I was up above the Arctic Circle, and I've been in all 50 states, and I'm not a bit ashamed of my service,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the picture.
Mm-hmm. what responsibilities did you have as a general and in the military?
I became the #1 general in the state of Iowa other than the adjutant general.
And could you describe what responsibilities you had as the major general?
Well, I was head of the training of all of the National Guard in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. All right. What were the most difficult parts of your service?
Well, I would say that the time I had to take away from my job building the insurance office
Mm-hmm.
to do a good job in the Army was a bit difficult because I had two responsibilities.
How did the war impact your perspective on life in the United States?
Me personally,
Yeah.
well, it gave me an awful lot of good schooling.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from the communication school, the cryptographic school, and cryptanalysts, and taught for 2.5 years. Then, as an officer, I graduated from the advanced infantry school at Fort Benning. Now that's a lot of training.
Mm-hmm.
It's 4 months. And also the Command and General Staff College, which is the highest school at Fort Leavenworth. I was a graduate.
Yeah. Do you think the war improved the U.S., our situation?
Well, the actual combat originally, we had no choice.
Mm-hmm.
We were attacked. But to continue trying to change the whole world to look at itself like we do, no, I am not for that at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's the people of China, for instance, they're completely different. Hell, there's about 5 times more of them, and they've got many things that it's not sensible. In other words, and likely India and most of these little countries,
Mm-hmm.
compared dictators to what we have, well, it's just hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
The every little company. I do not agree that the United States tries to change the whole world to look at it like it does itself. And it's been at it for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you put this down, but we have lots of Muslims in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and many of them have learned to accept some Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Our own president is probably a Muslim now.
Mm-hmm.
And
What are some good memories of your service?
well, at the time I may not have thought it, but graduating from advanced infantry down at Fort Benning, 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and next was Command and General Staff School. That was like graduating from a 1.5 years of college, each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from those 2 schools. The Commanding General Staff School at Benning was the #1 school, or at Leavenworth. The only one that was better than that was one back east, and actually it was called #1, but it was actually kind of a gift. It was like getting another. It was like getting another thing on your chest.
So, how well prepared do you think you would have been for combat had you been sent overseas?
Depending on the job, if I'd have been a general officer, I think all right. As a company commander, I'd have had to learn a lot. I had been a company commander, but not in combat. Now that may be hard for you to understand it, but if you have not had actual combat yourself, it's pretty hard to be a good teacher. But as the general officer, I could choose the people to do the teaching.
So, my last question, what were your thoughts on women in the military force?
Well, that was fairly easy. I was never what you thought women should be combat, but there were many jobs that women could do. Now, some of them grew into combat and performed good, but I don't think I would have been the guy to choose them.
I got you. All right, well, that should pretty much do it. Thanks, Papa.
Okay, thank you.
In interviewing Landon's grandpappy, we found out the war affected people differently than wars today. Mr. Gamreth had to leave his insurance company he was trying to build up. Today there's no draft to take people from their jobs. It's all about volunteering.
Another difference is that wars today don't change our lives as students as noticeably. During World War II, many kids were forced to take on new responsibilities. Some had to drop out and work. We've been lucky enough that our everyday lives haven't changed. During World War II, when the going got tough, they just worked harder. They were starting to get aid programs, but nothing like today's. Today, people can just go out and sign up for welfare and make it by.
Our interview with Mr. Gamreth gave us a deeper learning about what it was like during World War II. Special thanks to Mr. Bob Gamreth for his time and words.